tapping back in, getting bucket show, man. Another hoops episode. Just sending some more things I want to talk about, man, on the hoop side. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you tell your family and friends. You dig what I'm saying? But I've been anxious to talk about some hoops. So I'm recording this on Christmas Day. And so on Christmas Day, the Spurs just beat the Thunder again, are now 3-0 against the Thunder this season. So the Thunder have lost 3 games to the Spurs, and I think they've lost 2 other games to the entire rest of the league. And I think the reason the Spurs are so good against the Oklahoma City Thunder is because they play with the same type level of aggressive defense that the Thunder do in the regular season. And what I mean by that is like the Oklahoma City Thunder plays such an aggressive brand of defense that they make the refs adjust to them. And I mean that in the best possible way. They make the refs adjust to the game rather than them having to adjust to the refs. And so the other team also has to adjust to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I don't think teams in the NBA are necessarily ready to meet that level of aggression at the tip-off point in the regular season. At the beginning of games, I don't think they're ready. So I feel like a lot of teams, a lot of times have to, adjust to playing against the Oklahoma City Thunder or throughout the course of the game. And by the time they kind of get used to that, that physicality on the defensive end, they're kind of either already down 20 points or it's kind of a little too late and they're trying to get back in the game, and they might actually get back in the game, but it's not enough time left on the clock for them to win the games. The Spurs, on the other hand, I feel like they play the exact same way on the defensive end. And they're young, just like the Thunder, and can run up and down all day. And when those two things collide, they're really an even matchup. Obviously, you're going to give SGA is probably the best player, but Wemby is a top 5-6 player on the planet when he's healthy, so he's not far behind. And then the rest of the boys, Stephon Castle, they all play with no fear. Stephon Castle plays with no fear. They got Dylan Harper thanks to them not being as good last year. They got De'Aaron Fox, who's, one of the top 10 point guards in the NBA. And when he's right, he's probably one of the top, 5 to 7 point guards in the NBA. So, and they got a bunch of guys that help fill around. Harrison Barnes still playing good basketball at his age. You got guys like Keldon Johnson. So they got guys that fit around, and they're built very similar to Oklahoma City Thunder. And so I think it's a very good matchup for the regular season, man, because a lot of teams aren't ready to match up with that. But the Spurs, outside of them just being aggressive in their defensive tenacity, bro, they got bucket getters, bro. They find ways to get it done. You know what Wemby can do. I've mentioned some of the guys already, but they have so many guys that can go get a bucket. Stephon Castle, from year 1 to year 2, his shooting's improved, immensely. Not that he's now necessarily a knockdown shooter, but last year you were sagging off. And what I mean by sagging off is you literally are just going to let him kind of shoot the ball. I don't consider sagging off LeBron, you want him to kind of shoot the ball, but you're not necessarily just playing off. Sagging off is what you do against a guy like Draymond. And last year they were kind of doing that to Stephon Castle, literally the whole lot of distance in between him and the basket, forcing that guy to shoot. Now they're still going to give him a little bit of space, but now you're a little bit closer. You want to have just a little bit of a contest now, because now he can actually hit that shot at a much higher clip than he was shooting last year. And he can also get to that midi. When he gets to the rim, if you let him get to the rim, he can jump out the gym. He's very crafty, even on layups and whatnot. So, and the middy's gotten better this year too, especially watching this game on Christmas. I've seen them a couple other times when they've played the Lakers a lot. I've seen every game they've played against Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm going to watch them a couple more times. And bro, the evolution, man, they're going to be scary. And they still got so many assets and draft capital they can use to, continue to sharpen around the edges, because I believe they found their nucleus. They're going to build around Fox, Wemby, Stephon Castle. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep. They can't. At some point, they're not going to be able to keep all 4. So it's going to be interesting to see if it's Fox who's going to end up going. Obviously, Wemby's not going, but I don't see them being able to keep Fox, Wemby, Harper, and Stephon Castle down the road. But again, that's down the road. For the next 3 years, they should be fine. Stephon Castle's probably going to get his rookie max after next year. So he'll have his rookie max, and then you'll have both D Fox on a max, and Wemby's probably going to get Wemby. I think already got his max, or is about to get it if he hasn't. So that's going to be the only thing that's necessarily going to turn around that nucleus. But as I said, when you got tradable pieces, a guy like Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, you got all the picks. You got guys like Sham Penny, who's another guy that's a sniper off the bench. Luke Cornett, one of the more underrated signings, in my opinion, of the offseason, and what he allows them to do, especially in the event of a Wemby injury. He was able to come in, and you don't necessarily need him for scoring because you got all those guys as I mentioned, but he's able to come in admirably, play defense, rebound, lobs here and there, putbacks. So he's able to come in. And so I think that was a perfect offseason signing. So they're built, as I said, the same way Oklahoma City are, the way Oklahoma City has, all these picks, the surrounding players, because they've drafted well, they've made smart trades. Both teams have kind of done that. And so I think it's the budding of a rivalry coming between these two teams for a very, very long time, because they got two very young superstars. SGA is 26 or 27 right now. So you would assume he's got another 5, 6, 7 years of being SGA. Wemby is 2021. That's another 10, 15 years that you expect Wemby to be Wemby. De'Aaron Fox is probably around the same age as SGA, maybe a year or two older. So he's still in the nick of his prime. As I said, Castle is going to be coming to his prime in the next, 3-4 years. And Harper, as I said, I think one of those guys eventually is going to be gone, because I don't think you can keep all four with the way that the salary aprons are and stuff right now. I don't think you can keep all four. But when you have all those assets and picks, you can keep retooling. And I think both teams are in perfect position to they have a chance at a long run for this thing, because they've done it through the draft and were able to build their team through the draft and not having to necessarily make one of those blockbuster trades and use all their assets. They got Fox, but they didn't have to use all their assets to go get Fox. Not like when the Lakers got Anthony Davis and they mortgaged everything. They got rid of Kuzma. They kept Kuzma. My fault. They got rid of Brandon Ingram. They got rid of Josh Hart. They got rid of Lonzo Ball, all their picks, right? And then pick swaps on top of that. So that wasn't a trade that the Spurs had to make to go get Fox. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But it's good, man. I think it's good for the game, both of them, and the way that they're playing. I think it's good to see that youth being able to come through and, compete against the old guys, because the old guys are trying to get their last remaining chips. You got Bron trying to, before he leaves, KD with Houston playing well. Steph, let's talk about that a little bit later. The Golden State Warriors, they're going right. But it's the young guns, man. They turn it into a game. Giannis in his prime, Jokic in his prime, both trying to get more chips than what they got right now. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But I'm loving the Spurs Thunder dynamic so far. And that was something I really wanted to touch on. Also, we're about to be in January, which means the All-Star game is a month and a half away, middle of February. So I wanted to give some time and talk about some guys that I think are guaranteed first-time All-Stars. I have 4 guys that I want to talk about. I think 3 as of today. I'm recording this on Christmas, as I said. As of December 25th, 2025, I think there's 3 guys that have to be no-brainer All-Stars, especially considering now it's positionless. So it doesn't matter if you don't have to take a certain amount of centers, you don't have to take a certain amount of forwards, guards, whatever. It's the best players. And I think those 3 guys are: 1, Austin Reeves. I don't think Austin Reeves is averaging 28-8 right now. And the Lakers are 10 games above 500, sitting at 4th in the West as of today. So I think he has to be in there. Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks. Jalen Johnson is out there balling. I didn't write his stats down, but I believe he's averaging a near trip dub as a 6'8" forward. Like what he's doing, both rebounding the ball, his defense. He's a guy that can legitimately guard 1 through 4. He can guard 1 through 4. He gets steals, he gets blocks. He's been on an absolute mission, and he's kind of helped keep them afloat while Trae Young was, hurt, because Trae Young got hurt very early in the year and was out multiple weeks. Let's see, Jalen Johnson, his stat line. Let's find his stat line. But he's balling right now. He's averaging 23.8 points. He's averaging 8 assists a game, and he is averaging 10.5 rebounds. He's averaging a double-double along with 8 assists, along with 0.4 blocks a game, 1.5 steals a game, and only 3.5 turnovers, shooting 38% from deep, 52% field goal percentage overall. That's a guy. And if you guys remember, coming into the year, both of these guys, Austin Reeves and Jalen Johnson, were on my guys most intrigued to watch this year, because I saw the growth coming from both of those guys. Those 2, and surprisingly, a guy that was never made an All-Star game, Jamal Murray. I think Jamal Murray's averaging his career high right now, 25 points per game. The Nuggets being what they are, I think the Nuggets are currently 3rd in the West as of today. They're right, although 2nd through 5 are all within 2 or 3 games. But I think those 3 guys have to be shoo-ins as first-time All-Stars this year. Those guys have to be All-Stars. And then there's another guy he's playing very good basketball, don't get me wrong. But I don't know if it's All-Star caliber, and that is Chet Holmgren. But I believe he has a chance to get in, because especially they've kind of lost, 3 games recently. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, when they started off 24-1 or whatever it was that they started off. And when you start off that good, it's kind of hard not to take two players from that team because SGA is going to the All-Star game, and it was going to be kind of hard not to take Chet with the way, because he is playing well, but I don't believe his numbers stack up to what those other guys' numbers stack up to. So do I actually think he should be an All-Star? Probably not. If we're going by who really has had better seasons, I don't believe he's in that conversation. But the voters take into account, that kind of team success, which I don't agree with in terms of all-star, because all-star just means it's just you. It has nothing to do with team accolades or nothing. It's your season, how you're playing. And I don't know if his numbers equate to what Jamal Murray is doing. I don't think they equate to what Jalen Johnson is doing. I don't think they equate to what Austin Reeves is doing. And I don't think they equate to some other guys you'd have to leave off the list to keep him in. But I could see it with the way that some of these voters vote that he could be in simply because of the Oklahoma City record. So those are my current All-Stars, first-time All-Stars. I'd love for y'all to drop y'all comments and let me know who y'all think y'all first-time All-Stars could be this year. But I think those threes I've mentioned have to be shoo-ins with the way they're playing because they're cooking. Like, there's no other way around it but to say that all these boys are straight cooking right now, cooking with gas, cooking with cheddar. So those are my first-time All-Stars. My next topic, as I mentioned, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Golden State Warriors. And I think the Golden State Warriors are in this predicament because if I'm Steph Curry, do I want to be here? Now, I say that saying I believe Steph Curry is a lifer, and I believe I think at the end of the day, I think it's more important for him to stay in his mind to stay with Golden State. But if I'm Steph Curry, he's also in his homecoming years, the final 2-3 years of his career. He's probably 37, about to turn 38 in 2026. So he's on the very last of him trying to go get a chip. Same with Bron, same with Kevin Durant, guys like James Harden. They're on these last legs, and it's like the Golden State Warriors, they're I think they're exactly at 500 or 2 games under 500. And Steph is putting up he's in 41, and it's taking that for them to just stay in games, let alone win them, because they're losing some of these games while he's putting up these high numbers. And I think it's the Golden State Warriors have to figure out what they're going to do. And I think it's obviously they're first going to try to build around Steph and Curry. But what do? You brought in Jimmy last year, and it worked for last year. But this year it hasn't translated to what they thought it would come to after having time last year, they had time last year and coming off of how they played. And then what stopped them ultimately was a Steph Curry playoff injury, but they got to figure out something. And then it went from, and that's just them playing basketball wise. And then we saw Draymond the other night, him and Steve Kerr got into it to where Draymond completely walked off and went to the locker room and didn't play the final, quarter of the game. So there's I think it was the final 20 minutes of the game actually. And so it seems like there's a whole lot of growing frustration in Golden State. So if I'm Golden State, you have to make a choice right now. It's are we gonna, and everything's gonna come down to Steph. They're not gonna make a decision until Steph says what Steph wants. They're never gonna trade Steph unless Steph says I want to be traded. And I don't think it's gonna come to that. But they have to figure out a way to fix this roster because they're running into nowhere. So it's either they can ride it out and continue riding into nowhere, or place themselves in a position to where either they're gonna have a chance to win with Steph, or it's all right, Steph, we want to keep you as a Warrior lifer, but it seems like we can't get there's not a move that can necessarily make us, championship contender. And we're kind of going into a space now where you're going to be going into, year 38, 39, 40, and we're going to be stuck thereafter, kind of how the Lakers were until LeBron finally joined the Lakers once Kobe retired. Cause it's where are we going to go? We can't get guys that have really make us contenders. And the only way for us to get and to really rebuild this thing and get back into basketball winning is to tear it down. And you're obviously not going to want to be here for a rebuild. So I think that's an honest conversation. If they can't figure out how to turn this around, there's still a lot of time in the season. They're 15-15 right now on Christmas Day. Before they play on Christmas Day, they played today. I forgot who they played, but they played today. And so there's time to figure it out. They've only played 30 games. So there's 52 left. So there's a little bit of time to figure it out. But they got to do something. I think the move that a lot of Warriors fans wants to see is probably Giannis Antetokounmpo. They got a guy like Kuminga. They got maybe a Podziemski, throw him in there. I think they got to throw, but I think the contract still, they got to add more in that for the contract. So they probably got to add a Draymond, but I don't think Steph wants Draymond to go. Do you have to trade a Jimmy? I don't know. So I haven't really looked into the contract situation, but contracts have to match. And so Giannis is probably making 50 something a year. And I believe Jonathan Kuminga signed for $24 million. So he's only going to be able to take up, a little less than half of that. So you still got to add pieces that make the numbers work. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens. But I think that might be the only move that can really shake this thing up. I just don't believe they're getting enough from guys like Buddy, guys like Pajemski. He's going to give you what he's going to give you defensively, but it's not much offense. Jimmy's never been a guy to where it's like, all right, we need you to go average 30. He's never really been that guy in the playoffs. Obviously, we've seen him have a great playoff series, but they're going to have to get there because right now they're sitting at 8th in the West, one game ahead of Memphis, who hasn't been great this year, and 3 games ahead of Portland. Right now they're sitting in the play-in, and I don't believe they're good enough to get out the play-in this year. Especially if they end up falling below 8 and they got to win 2 playing games, I don't believe they're good enough to do that as currently constructed. So we'll see where they go from there. Kind of on the similar topic, I wanted to talk about some teams that I believe it's time for them to rebuild. It's completely time. It's no let's save it. Like the Warriors still have a chance because they have a nucleus. They feel that they can kind of makeshift or whatever and make one move and get back into title contention. These teams, I don't think they're one move away from title contention. The New Orleans Pelicans. What I'll say about the Pelicans, trade everybody besides Derek Queen. I'm going to rebuild around Derek Queen because there's a possibility he could become, a superstar. So at least they have a guy that they feel like they can rebuild around. I love a guy like Trey Murphy, but I don't know if he's the number one option, right? So maybe if you feel like you could rebuild around Trey Murphy and Derek Queen, that's what you go for and you trade everybody else. But if it were me, I'd probably build around Derek Queen and I'm trading everybody. Zion, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and I'm trying to get back as much as I can. I think they still got DeJounte Murray, who hasn't played since his Achilles injury. Maybe when he's back, somebody at the deadline might want him. But if I'm them, I'm blowing it up right now. They're going nowhere slowly. The New Orleans Pelicans are 8-23, 31 games into their season. They're going nowhere slowly. And I'm sure Zion's, his, what you would have once got for him, it's nowhere near as high. Simply the injuries. When he's been on the court, he's been, kind of what you hoped out of a number one pick. The problem is how often can you get him on the court? That's been a problem. And I think because of that, it's kind of just set this franchise back. And now I just think they're in a point. They've tried to make moves, to fix it and turn it around, and it's just not working. And they got Derek Queen, as I said, and I think it's just time I rebuild around him. And I think there's a whole lot you can get for even for Zion. I don't think you're going to get a package you once would have got, but you can still get something back that helps you for the future. And I think there's playoff teams right now that will trade you 1, maybe even 2 first-round picks and like a young player that can help you in that rebuild for a guy like Herb Jones. You might get 2 picks out of not Herb Jones, for Trey Murphy. You might be able to get 2 picks out of that. And I think you can also get another first for a guy like Herb Jones, an athletic wing that can space the floor and guard the best player every night. And Trey Murphy can also play very good defense, but can also fill it up. I think he's averaging 20 on the season. So both of those guys, I feel like, can fetch you at least 3 or 4 first round picks, and a couple of other solid young players. If you talk about a guy like the Lakers, they have a guy like Connect that New Orleans might want. What are some other contending teams? A team like the Nuggets. I don't know if the Nuggets really got a young guy that a team might want to build around because they kind of just paid Christian Brown. They paid Bruce Brown to bring him back. They got Cam Johnson. So they got guys. But I'm sure there's some teams that have younger guys that they can go out there and make a trade that would love a guy like Herb Jones. Like I'm sure like Cleveland, because DeAndre Hunter hasn't been as good as he was, last year. I'm sure they'd love a guy like that. And they got a couple young guys over there, not at the level that I think people think superstardom, but they got young guys over there that they can trade. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens. But New Orleans Pelicans for sure. The LA Clippers. Now, Kawhi's been back and he's been playing pretty well recently. He's getting back into Kawhi form. I'm going to give them 2 more weeks. But sitting here today, the LA Clippers are 8-21. 8-21 through 29 games. If they continue at this pace, I'd give them 2 more weeks. I'd say by January, we're December 25th. Give them January 10th. If by January 10th, those dudes have not gotten closer, they're 8-21, so they're 13 games under 500. By January 10th, if they're still 10 games or more under 500, wrap it up. I'd see if James Harden, they're both from LA, so I don't necessarily know if they want to be traded, but I don't think either one of those players have really done anything in their career, like in their Clipper career, that really means that like they should have that swan song with the Clippers necessarily. Like Chris Paul had that, and we saw how they did Chris Paul anyway. So obviously you could tell the Clippers don't care about what the players feel. So I'd see if there's a team that's out there at the deadline that might want to go and bring that team that needs a point guard that might want a guy like James Harden. Houston, they could use a point guard. but it seems like they think Fred VanVleet could possibly come back, but that's a team that could use a point guard. Minnesota, another team that could use a point guard. Anthony Edwards and them boys could definitely use a point guard. Let's see, anybody else I think could use a point guard. The Knicks don't need them. Boston, maybe. Especially with the way they think Tatum can really come back. They seem like it's a real possibility. You go get them James Harden. Now, I'm not thinking about any deals. I'm just saying teams that could use another guy that can score on his own and also get other guys the ball. And then Kawhi, I'd trade him too. But if you're the Clippers, bro, if in 2 weeks you're not back in, like I'd say if you're not around 6 or 7 games, no pun intended, around 500, I think it's time for it to go, man. Go and try to get you a young guy, maybe a LaMelo Ball. That's been a rumor that's been going on for 2 years now or so. LaMelo to the Clippers. Maybe do that in a 3-team trade and get James Harden to a competitive team and you just get picks and young players. Who knows? But I think that's what's going to necessarily have to happen because I don't see better as of late, but it's been horrendous to start this year. The Memphis Grizzlies, also a little bit better as of late, but if I'm them, I think the group has run its course. They've already got rid of one piece of the group in Desmond Bane, who's now in Orlando, and I'm sure he's happy he's in Orlando. And Ja Morant's been hurt, as he has been for like the last 3 seasons. He's kind of been making more noise for what he's his antics, if we want to call them antics, with Klay Thompson, with other people while he's in street clothes and not playing. I think Jaren Jackson's a good player, but do you believe he's a number 1 or even a number 2 option on the title team? Probably not. But could you slide him in as the 3rd guy? Absolutely. And so I think both of those guys, I think Ja's value is also similar to Zion, not as high as it once was. But I think Triple J, has good value. Just defensively, his ability to space the floor can still give you 17 a night. I think that's a guy that, again, playoff contending teams might be willing to give up a pick or 2 to really go get that guy at the deadline. And some of these might not even come at the deadline. My point is this should just be after this season for sure. It should not be considered. But at the deadline, championship teams or teams with championship aspirations are willing to go and make a sacrifice for sure. So that's why I'm just saying at the deadline. But and all these teams just need to rebuild come this summer if the trend continues in the way it's continuing. Sacramento Kings, they've already pretty much said they're going to rebuild. They're trying to get rid of DeMar DeRozan. They're trying to get rid of Sabonis. They're trying to get rid of Zach LaVine. So it seems like that one is an obvious no-brainer because it seems like that one's already happening. And lastly, the Milwaukee Bucks. It's time. They were around 500 with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now Giannis is hurt. And they are now 6 games under 500. And it doesn't look like, it's going to be any better, even when Giannis, is healthy enough to come back from his calf injury. That is somebody I believe should be traded at the deadline. I feel like it would be a waste to have Giannis waste an entire year like Anthony Davis kind of did in that last year in New Orleans when they kind of just sat him out and didn't want to get hurt so they could trade him. I think it will be great to see whether Giannis ends up in New York, which seems like it's his preferred destination. If he ends up with a team like the Lakers, if he ends up with a team, as I said, teams that got assets, like the Thunder got assets. I don't see them making that trade, but they got assets. The Spurs got assets. I think that's a little more realistic of a trade possibility than the Thunder. But, everybody will move heaven on earth to go get Giannis. The Detroit Pistons, Giannis and Cade Cunningham. It's a little nasty right there. So I think that's another team that needs to blow it up because it's just they no longer have a roster that can compete. They got, in my opinion, the best player in the world. I think without question, one of the 3 best players in the world, no matter who you ask. And they just, unfortunately, they cannot win ball games anymore. So that's it, man. So that was my week. That was my NBA weekly roundup that I wanted to hit on this week, man. I'm going to be more consistent. I got to be more consistent on the long form videos. We active on the social medias, man. So make sure you tap into the social medias as well. That's all at the top of here. They also pop up on here as the YouTube shorts. So those are consistent every day, but I'm going to get more consistent with the long-term explanation in these videos like this one right here. So make sure y'all stay tuned in for that. We'll drop a football one soon, especially heading into these playoffs. But yeah, man, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Yeah.